So I'm going to show the ancient Near Eastern origins of the Christmas tree from the Bible. Christmas trees don't just come out of nowhere. So let's start at Exodus 34:13. This is the first time we see this word, Asherim. Asherah, a Canaanitish goddess of fortune and happiness, a symbol of this goddess, a sacred tree. It's a sacred tree. Doesn't matter if it's a pole. Pole is a tree that was cut down with the branches cut off, but a tree cut down could also have the branches still on there. Now, there are traditions around the world of totem poles, different wooden poles with carved images and whatnot, but there is also a sacred tree tradition that has existed for thousands of years. Today we call this the Christmas tree. So we see here the Asherim is something that can be cut down, Baal associated with the pillars, and Asherah associated with the trees. You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations whom you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. Now we're going to see this phrase many times in this video. So we have the green tree. And you shall tear down their altars and shatter their sacred pillars, that's associated with Baal, and burn their Asherim with fire. So again, made of wood. And you shall cut the graven images of their gods in pieces and destroy their name from that place. You shall not plant for yourself an Asherah of any kind of tree beside the altar of Yahweh your God. It makes this association here with the Asherah and a tree. And you shall not set up for yourself a sacred pillar, which Yahweh your God hates. So Yahweh hates the sacred tree. I grew up in a house that had the sacred tree in the house, and we made offerings to the tree by putting the presents under the tree. First, we gave gifts to the image of a goddess / demon / alien, just like they do today in temples around the world. They give offerings to the image of a supernatural being. Incense, candles, very much like Christmas. They sacrificed to demons, all right? So he's calling Baal and Asherah demons right here. And the image of Asherah was a sacred tree that was cut down. So they forsook Yahweh and served Baal and the Ashtaroth. All right, that's plural. And the anger of Yahweh burned against Israel. So how does God feel about the modern day phenomenon of Christmas? What do you think? Cut down the Asherah and take the second bull and offer a burnt offering with the wood of the Asherah, which you shall cut down. And they cried out to Yahweh and said, we have sinned, because we have forsaken Yahweh and have served the Baals and the Ashtaroth. Unfortunately, when I try to talk about this with other Christians, they just get upset. They do not say, oh, we have sinned. We have these images of the ancient Near Eastern goddesses in our church or in our house, the sacred tree. We'd better remove it. No, they don't respond like that. They get angry. They get upset. Solomon kind of perfected syncretism. For Solomon went after Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Zidonians. Will scatter them beyond the river because they have made their Asherim, provoking Yahweh to anger. So Israel as a nation was kicked out of the land, and they went into exile and all that stuff because they made the Asherim, which was basically a sacred tree. Now, obviously, they didn't call it a Christmas tree back then. Christmas didn't even exist until almost 400 years after the birth of Christ. Why will the Israelites go into exile? Because they have made their Asherim, which is a sacred tree, provoking Yahweh to anger. This is the ancient, original, prototype version, what became the Christmas tree. Christmas tree type things don't just come out of nowhere. There's a history behind it, and it goes all the way back to the ancient Near East. And it's in the Bible, right there. If you want to hide something from a Christian, just put it in the Bible, especially in the Old Testament. They'll never find it. Judah did what was evil in the sight of Yahweh. They also built for themselves high places and sacred pillars and Asherim. But now the Israelites have basically become the Canaanites. They become polytheist idolaters, doing these same exact practices. All right, a male prostitute, they're kind of like Levites, but they're transvestites. You got the high places, the temple. Sacred pillars, this is for Baal. The Asherim for Asherah, the goddess. The high hill, which is the high place. And you got every green tree. Now, what do we put beneath every green tree? Now we put the presents beneath every green tree now, which is an offering to the image of the Canaanite goddess or the sacred tree. A horrid image for Asherah. Okay, so again, this image made of wood can be cut down and burned. But the high places were not removed, right? Why is that? It's because the idolatry has not been removed from the human heart. Ahab also made the Asherah. He's whoring around with foreign women and foreign gods. It's a package deal. So once again, making the sacred tree provoked Yahweh to anger. I'm going to speculate here and just take a wild guess that Yahweh does not like sacred trees very much. And basically, every single king of Israel after Solomon was a polytheist. And most of the kings of Judah as well, except a few of them. Ahaz, he did not do what was right in the sight of Yahweh his God. He walked in the way of the kings of Israel, and even made his sons pass through the fire, according to the abominations of the nations. Now, this could refer to a child sacrifice. It could also be some kind of castration ritual. This is the king of Judah. He also sacrificed and burned incense on the high places and on the hills and under every green tree. And they set for themselves sacred pillars and asherim, sacred pillar, sacred tree, on every high hill and under every green tree. They did evil things, provoking Yahweh to anger. And they served idols. But Yahweh said, "You shall not do this thing," but they did that thing. Nobody listens even today. They forsook all the commandments. They made molten images to calves and made an Asherah, and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. And they made their sons and their daughters pass through the fire. These are Israelites, all right? So Yahweh rejected all the seed of Israel and afflicted them, gave them into the hand of plunderers until he had cast them from his presence. Yahweh caused Israel to depart from his presence as he spoke through all his slaves, the prophets. So Israel went into exile from their own land into Assyria until this day. And this is all because of what? All because of the Asherah, which is, again, a wooden symbol of a female deity. You think a Christmas tree is not a big deal? Hezekiah, of course, the great reformer, took away the high places and shattered the sacred pillars of Baal, cut down the Asherah. They were cut down, and he broke in pieces the bronze serpent that Moses had made, the Nehushtan. That's what we should be doing today, but no, nobody wants to do that today. King Manasseh, possibly the most evil king ever. He was evil, according to the abominations of the nations. He rebuilt the high places, which Hezekiah, his father, had destroyed. And he erected altars for Baal and made an Asherah, a wooden symbol of a female deity, and worshipped all the host of heaven and served them. King Uzziah commanded Hilkiah, the high priest, and the priests of the second order and the doorkeepers to bring out of the temple of Yahweh all the vessels that were made for Baal and for Asherah and for all the host of heaven. And he burned them. And guess what? He also tore down the houses of the male cult prostitutes, the Kadesh, the transvestites. The transvestites were in the temple, where the women were weaving hangings for the Asherah. So they were decorating the tree. Cut down a tree, put it in your house, and hang things on it. There's also good reason to believe that they would castrate children and place their castrated testicles under green trees. Kind of like you put a present under the Christmas tree, they would castrate children and put their testicles under the green tree as kind of an offering for the Asherah, the fertility goddess. So the Christmas tree is a modern-day representation of all this kind of stuff. Have you seen what faithless Israel did? She went up on every high hill and under every green tree, and she was a harlot there. So it was because of the lightness of her harlotry that she polluted the land and committed adultery with stones and trees, all right? The stones are the pillars, all right? These are the pillars of Baal, and these are the sacred trees of the Asherah, the ancient version of the modern-day Christmas tree. Christmas trees don't just come out of nowhere. We can trace it back to Northern Europe, and we can trace the paganism of Northern Europe back to the ancient Near East. But they pollute the land. That's why the Canaanites had to leave, because they were polluting the land. But then the Israelites moved in, and they also polluted the land. Adam and Eve polluted the land, and we are polluting the land today. Judgment is coming. Only acknowledge your iniquity, that you have transgressed against Yahweh your God, and have scattered your ways of harlotry to the strangers under every green tree. What are they doing under these green trees? What's happening here? So what does this phrase mean, under every green tree? According to the Theological Dictionary of the Old Testament, it polemicizes against cultic observances on the high places, which reflect Canaanite influence. Participation in these cults has brought guilt on Israel in the eyes of Yahweh. The exile is interpreted as Yahweh's just punishment for such conduct. The Israelites were sent to exile because they worshipped the ancient version of what we call the Christmas tree today. Remember, back in Deuteronomy 12, verse 2, they were told, "You shall utterly destroy all the places where the nations whom you shall dispossess serve their gods, on the high mountains and on the hills and under every green tree. And you shall tear down their altars and shatter their sacred pillars and burn their asherim with fire, and you shall cut the graven images of their gods in pieces and destroy their name from that place." These ancient practices are alive and well today in the form of Christmas trees. They have deceived us, they have tricked us into worshiping their gods. So Deuteronomy 12:2, which I just read, cites practices associated with the fertility cult performed at tree sanctuaries, whose fresh, leafy luxuriance symbolized vegetative fertility, thus exposing the guilt of Israel and Judah. Jeremiah 17:2 logically connects this cult with the asherim, which is right here. As they remember their children, so they remember their altars and their asherim by green trees on the high hills. Logically connects the ancient version of the Christmas tree, the ancient sacred tree, with the green trees here on the high hills. In the exilic period, therefore, Ranan, which is the tree, became a technical term for the false cult that, in the eyes of the Deuteronomists, had brought disaster on Israel. So what's supposed to be the symbol of fertility became a symbol of judgment and exile. So the exile was the result of people worshiping the ancient version of a Christmas tree, and that's what people are doing today. What do you think is going to happen? Kind of like here in Numbers 25, they use deceptive tricks. They have deceived us into worshiping their gods. The Christmas tree is a deception. There is a Christian way to celebrate the incarnation and the nativity and all these kind of things. But what's happened is that people are practicing syncretism when they bring in these ancient pagan images of the sacred tree, otherwise known as the Christmas tree. Now, Jeremiah 10 is one that people like to use to talk about Christmas trees, because it is wood cut from the forest, the work of the hands of a craftsman with a cutting tool. They make it beautiful with silver and gold. Okay, so it is talking here about decorating a tree, right? Cutting down a tree and decorating it. That's what they're talking about. They strengthen it with nails and with hammers so that it will not totter, right? Just like today, people have a little Christmas tree stand so it doesn't fall down. Yeah, I guess this deserves to be on the list. But it's not the only verse. See, it's all about the Asherah. So they remember their altars and their asherim, right? That's plural of Asherah. By green trees on the high hills. Well, there's the green tree. There's the high places. And there's the asherim. There's a connection here between all of this stuff. So you're going to put a green tree in your house and decorate it with silver and gold, with ornaments, with round balls, fertility symbols, and lights. Burn candles? Really? Is that what you're going to do? Really? Go for it. Because you have burned incense and have sinned against Yahweh. This evil has befallen you. Why do you think bad things are happening today? Why do you think all the governments are turning against their own people? Then you will know that I am Yahweh when their slain are among their idols, all around their altars, on every high hill, on all the tops of the mountains, under every green tree, and under every leafy oak. Places where they offered a soothing aroma to all their idols. People would worship demons at the green tree, or under the green tree, apparently. Well, guess what? People still make offerings under the green tree today, don't they? It's called a Christmas present, placed under the green tree as an offering, and then opened up later, representing the blessing that the goddess has bestowed upon the people. It's called whoring around with other gods. As our good friend Hosea would say, my people ask their wooden idol, and their diviner's wand declares to them, for a spirit of harlotry has led them astray, for they have played the harlot, departing from their God. They offer sacrifices on the tops of the mountains, and burn incense on the hills, under trees. And I will uproot your Asherim from among you, and eradicate your cities. And I will execute vengeance in anger and wrath on the nations which have not listened. Is your nation listening? Now here it says uproot your Asherim, almost kind of like a tree. So do you want to put a sacred tree in your house? There are other ways to worship God than putting an ancient Near Eastern sacred tree that represents the goddess Asherah in your house. Worship of the ancient sacred tree was what led to the exile of the Israelites. Are we ever told to put a sacred tree in our house in the Bible? Actually, we're told not to. We're told to burn it down.